This is Greg Troutline with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Martin Curtin, the CEO of Curtin Maritime, and Mitch Lee, the co-founder and CEO of ARC, to discuss the recently announced $160 million deal with Curtin Maritime ordering 8 hybrid electric tugs.
So ARC is a nearly 5-year-old company at this point. We are based out of Los Angeles. We've got a team of nearly 200 now. We have been building electric boats on the consumer side for since we started this company and are scaling production of our second product, the ARC Sport, and are now expanding into the commercial sector.
Founded in 1997, we're coming up on 28 years old. Just about 500 employees, 50 vessels of consequence between tugs and barges. We specialize in large-scale mechanical clamshell dredging and marine transportation, tugs and barges.
Just to start us off, the impetus to order 8 tugboats at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Our journey into zero emissions or near zero emissions vessels started quite a while ago. We looked at some original pilot projects based out of Norway with Fjord 1 ferry system. We looked at those components. The battery technology wasn't quite there. That was about almost 10 years ago now. And ever since then, we've kind of always looked, us being home ported in Long Beach, California. California is always the leading edge of every environmental regulation in the world. So we knew just from a market standpoint that these things were not going to go away. They were going to ramp up. And our job as being an innovator and a disruptor in our industry is to kind of keep tabs on that and make sure that we're in a position to act. Timing was not great for us in that time for zero emissions hovercraft. And so we went and we focused on the expansion of our dredging fleet, which we then built, the largest and most environmentally friendly clamshell dredges in the world. So those projects really led us to being in a really good position that now that the timing is a bit better for us and the regulation market is really heating up as far as what California is doing with the California Air Resources Board to our ship docking markets and our tug and barge markets in general. We started to embark about 2 years ago on the path of designing dedicated battery electric vessels for the harbor services market. With that being said, as we watch the industry build the first ones, our view of what a zero emissions tugboat should be is much different than what the industry was producing. And so through our evolution and our design team, we started to refine that process of what really needs to be in an electric tugboat. What is the industry adding? What is the level of complexity adding to the construction cost? And we started looking at it in a much different view. So we've always had a very long-term partnership and relationship with Snow Boat Building out of Seattle. And so we engaged our friends at Snow and we said, guys, this is the path that we want to go on. And we really want to vertically integrate our builder into this process. And so we entered into an agreement to vertically integrate Snow Boat Building into Curtin Maritime with partial ownership of Snow. And so that started that process. And we've worked and built a lot of vessels with them. And we really enjoyed that process. And it's been a long process. Brett Snow is, in my opinion, the finest boat builder in North America. And for us to have them on board is great, and it's an honor. So we embarked on that trip about 2 years ago and started designing the boat that we now have under construction. And knowing that we were going to build a lot of these boats because of just the necessity here in California, and then watching it spread across the country and the world for that matter, we said we really need to figure this out, and we need to be able to figure it out at scale. And what we were seeing is, okay, the concepts and the proof of concepts have happened. We've seen it in trucking, we've seen it in cars, we've seen it in maritime vessels. Now we need to start to look at this concept, not just as like, let's build an electric tugboat, but if we've got every port district in California that's of any consequence vowing to reduce emissions and or go zero emissions, this is a need that's real. And the amount of vessels that are just on the West Coast alone substantiates the need to make a severe effort in this case. And so by doing that, we decided, okay, this is something, we're not capital committed to a fleet of diesel harbor tugs now. This is not a market that we plan. This is a market that we're interested in, but we always look for some kind of catalyst event to be able to go in and see something different. In dredging, it was just the pure scale and technology that we were able to develop to change mechanical dredging. And we saw the opportunity for the ship docking world as the same, with California saying, hey guys, we're not going to allow this anymore. It's an extremely difficult problem to solve. And so as we entered into solving that, we started to learn about ARC just through normal channels. And then that's when we started to meet with Mitch and his team, just trying to figure out who they were. And we were really impressed, to be honest, completely and totally surprised at who they were and what their mindsets were. And that's when we approached ARC and said, guys, this is what we're doing. We're doing it on a large scale. We think you guys are really the right partners for us to be able to develop this technology over a series of boats. Is this something that you guys are really interested in doing? And of course, Mitch and his team are just awesome. And they were like, man, this is like a match made in heaven. And that's kind of how the whole process started, was because we wanted to be able to vertically integrate all aspects of our builds because we want to be able to do it at scale. We feel that a lot of the markets have gone to, people doing, bareboat charters and equipment leases, and, groups are not wanting to put equipment on their balance sheet, or they're not equipped to deal with the design and shipyard periods. And for us to be able to come in and provide a turnkey solution to an industry, whether we operate the boats or we lease them to existing operators, we just felt that hole in the market existed in a very large scale, and that hole was only going to get bigger. And so that's kind of how we arrived at doing a multi-boat deal, integrating both ARC and Snow and Company into that process, and being able to provide a real turnkey solution for the industry as a whole. So Jay Edgar and his design team at Snow and Company did the design with obviously our team at Curtin Maritime, and with input from the ARC's team for the integration of their components. So Snow and Company's design team, led by Jay Edgar, was the design team for the naval architecture work.
Okay, that's fabulous. So, Mitch, from your side, and obviously, Martin's got a lot of nice things to say about your team and where you're heading. Can you just start me off? Just discuss specifically the full deliverable from ARC for these boats.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to maybe take a half step back before I get there to say, to build on what Martin has said here, this is really an exciting moment for the industry. You've seen a lot of pilot projects, a lot of one-off projects that are heavily subsidized, that are ordering N of one, and that drives a lot of complexity. It makes it hard for those vessels to actually be competitive in the market. This deal is an inflection point in large part because it signals that we are at a stage where we can go be directly competitive with diesel tugs, that we are at a stage where that's actually a competitive advantage now. And, we referenced that this deal that we signed is two companies, ARC and, Curtin, that both want to make money as companies that don't today have, a bunch of external grant funding and stuff lined up, and it still makes business sense to go do this, and that's incredibly exciting for that. And I can't speak highly enough about Martin and his team and the ambition behind this to actually go commit, because there's so much inertia here and what I view as a outdated technology, that for somebody to jump over and say, hey, we're going to go all in on a more modern powertrain technology, it takes a lot of ambition. And it's what has certainly attracted us as a company to Martin and his team, because it's just been incredibly refreshing to work with somebody that is operates at the same speed that we like to operate, operates with the same level of ambition that we like to operate at, and we couldn't be happier to be in this deal. So With that said, what we are delivering to this project is largely the powertrain and the integration. That means batteries, the all the all the electrical components that run at your high voltage and integration surfaces to get those things integrated in online, firmware, software stack that layers on top of that. What we are decidedly not doing is trying to, be too opinionated about anything else outside of that, in large part because Martin has this experience. Snow and Company has this experience, and we want to lean on their collective expertise when it comes to the actual shipbuilding, the actual layout and design of the vessel. And so we're excited to be partnering with them on that.
No, that's awesome. Hey, Mitch, just to clarify, so are you manufacturing the equipment, or can you talk about what ARC is doing as far as like the actual deliverables as far as the manufacturing? Are you consolidating? What's your role specifically?
We make or build up our own battery packs. So that is
Hmm.
one thing that is very much specific to ARC. Uh, Wire harnessing and harnessing in general, firmware and software all done in-house. We are using well-known, well-validated, uh, off-the-shelf kind of components for other parts of this, and then we are owning the integration of those components.
So, can you expand on the opportunities? Obviously, I'm interested to learn more about ARC, but when you look at the maritime sector, and you've already kind of referenced it previously, but I mean, what opportunities do you see when you look around?
I mentioned that there's, I believe, just a lot of inertia behind, people are capital committed to diesel vessels and to uh, kind of that path right now. We look at the industry and see an opportunity to modernize it around what I view to be a fundamentally better technology for the water, which is these electric or hybrid electric powertrains. And when you are able to rebuild the vessel around those powertrains, you get a lot of advantages because you could simplify the design, simplify the architecture, and that drives not just upfront cost advantages, but then cost advantages over time. You have again, a simpler architecture that is uh, sees higher uptime, lower maintenance burdens, and that comes back to your bottom line. Uh, I, I'm enthusiastic that this is just the start of the entire industry starting to convert over to electric powertrains or hybrid electric powertrains.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting. Again, I appreciate both your times. And this last question is for both of you. And I think Martin will attest, and you as well, Mitch, that all technology, every industry, it comes with its positives and negatives. They all come with their individual challenges, particularly when it's still a relatively new and emerging technology. So we've discussed a lot of the positives. From either of you, what do you consider to be the challenges or the alternate considerations with these hybrid electric drivetrains or these hybrid electric tugboats, more accurately?
I can take a first pass and then I'm very curious what Martin has to say here. But historically, it's been cost. The
Mhm.
thing that has kept this out of the market is that just has not been cost competitive to go electric. And that, I mean, these are commercial vessels with a commercial purpose. They're intended to make money, and if your upfront cost is too high, they're just not going to be competitive in the market. So that's been one of the big challenges. The other one, which Martin alluded to, is that the charging infrastructure still needs to get built out. And that is actually something that we want to help out with as well, given our expertise in kind of the charging and high voltage side of this. So those are probably two of the big ones. Now, we've designed this in a way that even absent the charging infrastructure, it still makes sense. It's still a better vessel. It still has a lower operating cost to it. Um, but those are probably the two big ones. And maybe the final one is you can think this is a great idea. You can say, hey, on paper, these electric powertrains are better. The execution of this still matters. And it's actually that bringing these pieces all together, like doing intelligent vessel design, pairing that with integration that actually hits a budget and hits a timeline and doesn't drag out or balloon. That's really hard. And hard for non-obvious reasons. Like you go to integrate these two different components and you don't factor in that there's, a certain bend radius on this thing and you're having to rework steel, and that just balloons costs in that way. So I think just bringing this technology to market is actually a big execution challenge. That's why, we're so excited to be partnered up with people that are very good at that side of things, that are very good at the execution side of the business.
Nah, that's excellent, Mitch. So, Martin, with that question on challenges to building hybrid electric, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the single biggest challenge is the status quo of operational profiles for standard hovercraft use now. When you have a diesel tugboat and you have a crew that's used to doing that, there's just differences between a hybrid or an all-electric tug and what it can do and what it can't do versus a tugboat or diesel tugboat. And so I think that the single largest hurdle for us to overcome is educating and training our industry on how to use the tool properly. Because when you ride a bike backwards, it's really difficult. And when you ride a bike forwards, it's really easy. And that's because the bike is designed to be ridden forwards. And so for us, I think the single biggest challenge is going to be just the use profile of what these tugs can and cannot do. And, getting everybody to understand that and proving to them that it's not as big of a hindrance. If you want something not to work because you're capital committed to a different type of technology, it's really easy to make something not work. For us, we feel that we're in a really good place because we're coming from a non-biased standpoint of, hey, this is a technology, our customer base of all the large scale port districts are pushing for this. So let's figure out a solution on how we can get this to work and how it can be effective. So I think the use profile, I'm not really afraid of any of the technology. All the technology is proven. It's just like what we've done in our dredges. All of the things that we're using in our dredges, though they've never been used in a clamshell dredge, are highly proven and really well thought out. And we've been very, very successful in taking technologies that exist in the world and applying them in different applications through a very thoughtful manner and being ultra successful in doing that. And we don't see the electric tugboat as being any different than that. There's Teslas that drive all over the place that are 100% electric. They're extremely simple cars when it comes down to their one-line diagram. And they work really, really well. They're really fast. They have good mileage. They have all these things. And so this idea that we can't do things with electric, it just doesn't exist that way in the world. We just haven't seen tugboats do this. And there's always going to be a lot of naysayers, and there's always going to be a lot of skeptics. And every industry that we've ever entered into, that's always been the case. And so this is not going to be any different. But we really like the space. The operational profiles for hovercraft and being electric and electric hybrid, in my opinion, are perfect. Trying to get an ocean going tug to be electric is just not a great use of time. So those things we feel very confident. We've gone through a lot of research. We've poured over a lot of data, and between all the groups that are in our vertically integrated team, we feel real strong about this position. And I think that the user profile is probably the single largest hurdle to overcome, just because, old habits die hard. But we're good at that. That's kind of what we specialize in.
Absolutely. Well, again, and if I'm correct, the first one's coming out in 2027. That's when it's scheduled.
It should be done in 2026. We've already started steel construction on the first boat. So
Okay.
plate is on the ground and modules are going together at snow. Chattel is delivering the first two sets of Z drives for the first two boats. And those, I believe, get delivered January 1. So ARC
Yep.
is providing components, batteries, drives, and integration. And so, yeah, we should probably be seeing the first boat and then the second boat a couple months after it probably Q4 of 2026.